Hi, I'm John with BitSize Tech, and welcome to the first episode of Getting Started with HashiCorp Terraform. Today, we're going to learn how to install Terraform, how to initialize a directory, what a provider block is, and also we're going to do some tests by setting up users and spinning up an instance. So join me in the rest of the video, and I'll see you there. All right. Thanks for joining me in the video. Oh, my LED lights seem to have come on, so a little bit of color in the background. It's that time of day. Anyway, thanks for joining me in the video. So we're going to get started. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually install Terraform. So we're going to get started with that first. That is the number one thing to do. So I've actually provided a link in the GitHub. You can go to my GitHub repo for my Terraform tutorial. There is a link directly to the downloads page. So obviously choose the correct one for your operating system. Through this tutorial, I'm going to do Linux. For Windows or Mac, this is actually easier because you'll either use Chocolatey or Homebrew, so those are pretty self-explanatory. There's a ton of documentation on it. I'm just choosing to do this one in Linux. Rather than using the actual package manager, I'm just doing it directly through downloads. You may need to know this at some point. So we're just going to go ahead and download that. And Terraform actually just did a 1.0 release, which is a big deal. When I was getting certified, it was still in 13, which I think was the last one right before 1.0 released. Only a few changes, but anyway, so that is now downloaded. So what we're going to do is we're going to CD into downloads, right? As you can see, it is there. So we're going to do an Unzip Terraform. Right, and then we're gonna choose a directory, and we're gonna say /user/bin user local. Sorry, I forgot that one. And then /bin, and we're also, after that successfully unzips, which is what that double ampersand means, we're going to go ahead and just remove that zip file. So we'll say rmrf and Terraform. Oh, I believe I need to do a sudo because I'm doing into local bin. Great. So if you do an LL, it's no longer there. If we do a Terraform version, you can now see that it is installed. So that's great. Another separate thing you can actually do is you can also do the autocomplete. So to do that, I'm just going to go back to my main path and do Terraform -install -autocomplete. And so I believe if I do a source, I might not actually have to do that, but I do Terraform now. I hit tab, I can actually see all the commands. So this is going to be super useful for you if you're getting started with Terraform. You can see all the different, essentially, commands that they have available. So that's great for completing. Awesome. So that's it. That's all it takes to get installed. So now what we need to do is actually create a directory we're going to work out of. So I'm going to go into my documents folder. Right, and I'm going to do a make dir /terraform, and we'll say first course. Oh, I need to. It's like, why is that not? Oh. Duh. Great, we can see first course is now there. Sorry about that. I was having a completely blonde moment. I didn't need the beginning slash. Anyway, So this is going to be our directory. So what we want to do is we want to cd and we're going to make a file. So I actually prefer to do this part in VS Code. You could have also done it here. I was just doing it in the terminal because I was already there. So we're going to create a main.tf file. .tf designates this as a Terraform file. There are a couple of different extensions for Terraform files that you'll learn about. .tf. You always want a main.tf. That's your primary file that you're going to be working out. Later on, we'll show you how to make modules. Modules can be referred to in your main TF. So instead of having everything in one file, which we all know can get a little cluttered, you can create a module and then call that module from your main TF. So it'll run any code that you have in there. But for now, we're just going to do everything in one file. It's going to make it the easiest. So whenever you start a file in here, you want to call it main.tf, and that's where you're going to put your initial information. So we're going to set up what's called a provider block. A provider block is essentially telling Terraform what things you want to hook into. So if you're using AWS, you put an AWS provider block. If you're using Azure, you put an Azure provider block. If you're using specific, providers like StrongDM, Linode, any others, you would put those in your provider blocks. That actually tells Terraform to go to those providers, pull down that information so it can hook into their APIs, because it's going to pull them locally into this directory. It's going to create a couple of hidden files. So we're going to go ahead and get started with Linode. I do have a link in there that you can get a free month, free credit. So if you're running through this course, you get $100 worth of free credit, so you shouldn't run into that for anything that I'm going to do. After that, a simple small instance is only $5. If you can't afford that, you can just follow along. Simple as that. $5 I know is a lot for some people. I tried to make this as cheaply as possible. AWS does have the free tier, but it's not always free. If you're past your first year and you're going in and making instances, those are no longer free. So this is a cheaper way. It's $5. If we did a T2 micro and we added public IPs or we added this and that to it, you could rack up a pretty big bill pretty simply. And I want to make this a very accessible course. So to do that, we would actually want to go to the Terraform registry. Now, with Terraform, they keep everything in their registry. All public modules are going to be here. There's also private modules that you can create, but we're just going to use public ones. So the first thing you want to do for your provider blocks is actually provide the information. So if you see here where it says use provider, it's going to tell you exactly what you need to put into your Terraform file in order for you to be able to use it. So we just downloaded 1.0, right? This applies to us. Now, if you're running an older version, you don't have to put this same information. Now, before you could just say provider Linode and it's just going to search for it. But as Terraform is getting bigger, they want to make sure that they're designating the right one. So there's going to be a specific required providers so it knows what to pull. So we're going to pull this information. As you can see here, there's a little bit more info that you can know about, and we'll look up how to do that. But we will go ahead and add these in here, right? So we're saying source here. That is going to tell you to go to the Linode provider, right? And then we're actually going to designate configuration information for that provider. How you would do that is you can actually go here, so you can see there is a token value that is required. But you can also put optionals like the HTTP address for the API. You can do agent prefixes in the API request. There's a lot of information here. So we're going to need a token. We'll go through that in a second. I'll do a quick setup for that. But this is the information. Right now we don't need that token. We're just going to initialize the directory. So we have our first provider block in here. We don't have any other information. We want to make sure that Terraform pulls down the necessary information. To do that, in your terminal. You can do it here, or, you know, if you're already in VS Code, we'll just do a new terminal. You're in Documents, you want to get to that folder, so cd into Terraform, and then first course, right, LL, we see our main TF. So I would say Terraform, spell it right, init, and that's actually going to pull the necessary files over for you to be able to run your configuration. So it has been successfully initialized. Now, if you reference anything, say you didn't have your provider block in there, and you started putting AWS code in there, it's specifically referencing AWS instance. It's going to throw an error. It says you need to reinitialize this directory. It doesn't have the necessary information to move forward. So you'll see what it did is first, it pulls down this lock.hcl. This is just cryptographic information to make sure that everything matches, right? There's nothing funky going on. But in this .terraform, you can see providers, registry, and this is where you'll actually see information for the Linode provider that it pulls down from that actual repository from Terraform registry. So that's just what that is. So now we have that. We need a token. So what is that going to look like? We can look at the example. It is just token equal. And then what it's saying here is that you can actually set an environment variable. Now, there's a way that you can pull different information and keep it safe in Terraform. You can use an environment variable. Some of these providers will use those. You can also something called a TF var. We'll do that in another course. So you can actually set that as an environment variable for not just the token, but for other things in Terraform. It'll actually recognize that and pull that information out of your profile. Now you can also create a TF-vars file. You can also create an auto.tf-vars file that gets loaded automatically with specific variables. So in this instance, you're going to reference an environment variable. So we're just going to copy this over and do it like their documentation does. So we'll just say tokens equal to Linode token. Now, if I go to echo Linode underscore token, you'll see there's nothing there right now. I haven't set that. So we need to get one, first of all. I'll show you how to do that. Second, we need to set that. So we'll go to linode.com, right? We'll log in. I'm actually using my GitHub. And then once you're in, you can see my Vault instance that's there. You would go to API tokens. And here, you can actually create a new personal access token. And don't share this with anyone. You know, if they get this token, they're going to be able to see it. As soon as this video goes up, this token's already going to be dead. So I don't care if you see it right now. This is an example. I know better than to leave it up. So we're going to say Terraform token. And for this, I'm literally just going to do everything read-write. Don't do that. Specifically get what you need for your tokens when you provision them. Obviously, in a lot of our examples, we're going to be using this token to create more than just one thing, so I don't want to sit here and mess with the permissions that they're right. I'm just going to set everything. I would suggest putting a pretty low expiry date on there. If I were you, since it is a hard-coded token, it gives you access and everything. I'm going to just immediately terminate mine after this, and I'll just spin up a new one each time. But you know, if you want to leave it longer, you can leave it longer. Just don't share that token, because whatever you can do with that token, other people can if they get it. So never put it out there. That's also the beauty of calling an environment variable, is no one ever gets that token. It automatically gets inserted in there. So we're going to set to 1 month. I'm going to hit create token. This is now our token. Great. So how do I set it? I'm going to do an export Linode token. All environment variables are case sensitive. Just FYI. If it's lowercase, it's lowercase. If it's uppercase, it's uppercase. So what is mine? It's all uppercase. So I want to make sure that one's all uppercase. So we're going to say Linode token equals. You could put this in quotes. I'm not, because I'm not putting any spaces or anything. Also, sometimes my paste in my virtual machine does this, so we're just going to go ahead and remove that. Right, let's double check it. Same one. Great. Helps if I go to the right one. So you do that echo again. Voila. Un Linode token. Great. So we've now set that token. It's now in there. Let's do something with it. So why don't we add a user? Say we want to add a user, or users is a better example. Say we wanted to add 5 or 10 users. Well, in your provider documentation, you're going to see this thing called resources. These are everything you can do. There's a hierarchy to this, right? So these are the categories. Within that category, you can do multiple things. So let's go to user. Great. Create an unrestricted user. Awesome. I want to do that. You want to create a restricted user with grants? You could do that too. There's an argument reference that you're going to see. These are going to show you your required fields, your optional fields, and what all those things do specifically. You can even reference attributes. So the great thing about Terraform is when you create an object, Terraform will be able to reference anything about that object in the rest of your code. So say you create for example, a VPC in AWS. Now, you've created 2 subnets with those. Well, later on, you need to know where to put your instances within AWS, and you need the ID for those specific subnets. Say you want to put one in a public, one in a private. Well, if you just put that information in there and just directly call it, it'll do that for you without having to look up those specific IDs. We'll show you examples in those later on in the course about how to do that. You just call directly to that specific, like, it would say AWS_instance, period, what you named it, right? So if I said web server 1, it'd be web server 1 dot ID, right? Like that would call that specific ID for that specific instance. If you're doing the same thing with a subnet, it's AWS_subnet. Say I made it public subnet, it would be public_subnet as the name, right? And I would say dot ID. It'll call that object for you. You don't ever have to look it up. So it makes things easier, more streamlined. Because Terraform understands how all of these things relate, it'll spin them up in the order it needs to. So say I created a whole VPC, a couple of subnets, a few instances, a load balancer, etc. It's going to try its best to provision those in the order that you need them. So this is the power of doing infrastructure as code. Makes things easier, faster. You don't have to wait on anything. You don't have to look anything up. I don't have to use the API to go, oh, what's the ID for this? I needed to put in the information. You can just tell it to call that object itself, and it'll do it for you. So, slight rant over. We'll just create, say, one new user. So we're going to copy this example block, right? I'm going to put it down here. And say I want to leave a note. So, newest users. You can leave comments, right? So you want to say Linode provider, right? Great, you can do that. HCL allows you to make comments in the code. Say you wanted to comment all this out, right? You could do a line comment. If I go up here, control that. That's a specific line comment. Say I wanted to undo that, right? Do a block comment. You can do a block comment. You could say, use this if you need X and leave a block comment, right? That's great. I love that availability for you to add notes in your own code, right? Internally, someone's going to come after you and need to understand how this stuff works. You can leave comments. So we're going to create a new user, right? We'll say Jeff. What's his username? Jeff. We'll say bit sized, right? It'll be Jeff at bitsized.tech. Great, we just created Jeff. Say Mary also came on, right? We'll just add Mary. We'll just go in. We'll say Mary. Great. We've now added these two in there. Whoop. So that it's as simple as that if you want to add objects. So say we want to see what's going to happen before we actually create those users. You would use something called Terraform Plan. What Terraform Plan does a dry run, right? It's going to see everything you have in here and make sure it understands what you're trying to do. So here you can see Jeff will be created. Here's all the information. Don't have to reply, right? Like what's his SSH keys, what's his username, like you'll know his grants. We scroll down, Mary will be created. Now say you didn't want to plan, you didn't want to see, you just want to make sure this is valid Terraform. You use Terraform Validate. Right, let's say I don't have an equals. I do this. I run Terraform Validate. I get a, to set an argument, use the equal sign, right? So it knows what's wrong with your code. It can point out the exact line. It says line 22. That was exactly the line I messed up. So these are some of the powerful things that you can do with it, right? So Terraform Plan, it'll return a value, tell you what's changing, what's not. Terraform Validate, just make sure your code's fine, right? You're still writing it. You're not sure. You want to like figure out everything that it's doing yet. You're like, I just want to make sure everything I wrote so far is copacetic. Just run Terraform Validate. Great. Now we want to actually create these users. You're going to do a Terraform Apply. Now what does this do? Well, first, it's actually going to do a plan again. It's going to tell you exactly what it's going to do. You can review this configuration, right? You're creating Mary, you're creating Jeff. You scroll down, you can see it plans to add 2. Now you actually have to say, do you want to perform these actions? And if you don't type yes, it's not going to do them. So I'll say yes. And look, even though it validated, oh, it says my token's invalid. Interesting. We just created that token. Did I not hit OK?
A few moments later.
All right. Sorry. Don't know what's going on there. It wasn't actually reading the environment variable. I'll troubleshoot that later. I just manually set it. Seems to be working now. So something's going on that it wasn't actually calling it. So I'll have to troubleshoot that. Create a new one just to test. So now we can see those users have actually been created, right? We've got 2 new users, Jeff and Mary. Those have been created and added. We didn't have to manually go add user, type in the username, type in that. Oh, do I want to grant them that or not? No, I can just set all those permissions in code. So say you have a list of them, you could actually make this iterable. We'll go through that later where you can create a dynamic block and go through and actually iterate in a loop multiple people if you wanted to. Not something we're going to go through right now. So awesome. That worked. We've done our first Terraform code. Now say we want to remove Jeff and Mary. How are we going to do that? We're going to do Terraform Destroy. Great. Does the same thing as Plan. It's going to tell you exactly what it's going to do. It's going to destroy both Mary and Jeff. So we have to confirm our change. Say yes. Sweet. Now say you don't want to actually, type yes. You know it's going to run. This is exactly what you want to do. You could add auto-approve, right? And that's going to do it automatically. You don't have to type yes. You don't have to confirm your changes. You understand what you're doing. You're just like, let's go. I don't want to. We'll gamble. We'll risk it. Same thing goes with destroy, right? You want to do an auto approve. You know what it's going to do. That's all you have to do. All right, great. We've removed those users. Say we don't want to keep hitting the wrong key. Say you don't want to do users. So you want to do an instance. Can't type sometimes, but you guys see that in the videos pretty often. I can be a lousy typer. Great. Let's verify our change, right? Let's refresh. Yep, just me. So let's say we want to do an instance. Well, you can go here. And here you go. Here's a simple Linode instance. Now, you'll see here, this is where we start talking about, I didn't go over this in the users, but this is actually the reference name. So if you wanted to say this is web server 1, whenever you want to reference anything, you would say Linode instance dot web server 1. That designates this specific object. So we're going to keep simple instance. We'll keep it 1804. I do want it in central, right? This is where we can go through and start making changes. So that type, right? This you'll actually need to know. You can see all types there. They give you the API to do that. We're going to go with a nano, right? This is the smallest one. Right, nano node. Authorized keys. I believe this is required. Oh, it's optional. All right, I'm not going to set one this time. I'll show you how to do it later, how you can reference it. So we'll do referential data blocks, right? That's another super powerful thing. So, right, we'll leave this as the really secure password. Right, we'll say group. Right, we're designating information. We'll say Terraform, right? And tags equal TF, right? Private IP, yeah, we want one. We want to be able to hit it locally so we don't have to go over the internet. We'll set that. Right, let's do another plan. So we see we're going to add one instance. It's going to figure out, after the fact, what ID it has, what its IP address, IPv4, IPv6. These are all things we can call to later on if we need to. So say you're setting up your infrastructure, right? You want a web server to talk to this specific database, and you want to script things. You can actually call in those scripts those specific objects. So you can start seeing how powerful this tool is. You no longer have to do these things manually. You don't have to go through and say, oh, I need the IP. I got to spin this one up first. You can just set those as variables within your own code, and suddenly it knows how to pull that information. So great. We'll do another Terraform Apply. This time we're just going to do an auto approve. Oh, didn't know that. Tags have to be at least 2 to 3. So we'll do TF1. Or tags have to be at least 3 characters in length. Great. It's spinning up. Oh my God. I'm turning on a server without having to manually click in. I could do 10 servers without having to manually click. I can give them all the same SSH key. I can generate a new SSH key. That's the other beautiful thing, is you can do things locally on your machine with Terraform. You think it's just about connecting the cloud providers. Suddenly you can also do something like as simple as creating a new SSH key on your machine, applying that to your profile, and then uploading that to all these machines for you to suddenly be able to SSH in without lifting a finger. All you've got to do is type it out. And you saw how long that took. It was 40 seconds, and we got a new server turned on. So you can start to see how powerful this is. Anyway, great. That's working. That's the start of Terraform. You're now starting to see how we can use this tool, what it takes, how it can connect with other things. We'll also start to learn about data blocks, right? Say you already have information in your provider you want to pull. So you're looking for a specific image, right? They have that available in the API. You could then do a search and call to that rather than manually typing it. You could update it. You could say grab latest or grab blah, blah, blah. You can put in filters, right? It doesn't have to be static. It can be dynamic. So this has been the intro, right? We don't need this server. We'll just do another destroy. We'll tear that sucker down. Look at that. It's destroying by itself. I didn't have to delete anything. I'm saving money. This cost me 10 cents to do this demo. Probably less than that. Whatever $5 divided over 2 minutes is, or $5 over 30 days with the 24 hour. Like, you got to do the math on that. So it's probably a fraction of a penny. You can see how this is a great tool for getting started in DevOps. You want to test things, or even being in DevOps. Now your infrastructure or even your testing environments don't have to be static. They can be dynamic. And that's the great thing, because that makes it more secure. That makes it easier. That makes so many things that you don't have to do anymore. You make an update, push that code to your CI/CD pipeline. You can actually run that remotely. It'll do a Terraform Apply. Heck, HashiCorp offers Terraform Cloud. You can do everything on their cloud, right? Your whole team can do stuff. It'll push these changes for you. So it's a great tool. I've come to use it a lot. I have actually started using the UI less and less, unless I'm really chasing something that I can't figure out, or if it's a specific thing that maybe is not available. Sometimes some things aren't available in the provider. I was using IBM Cloud the other day, and I created a Kubernetes cluster. I couldn't pull the certs through Terraform and the other providers you could. I had to manually go in and do that, or provision a service account, right? Like, there's some things that are still manual, but that's not a lack of the tool. That's a lack of programming for the tool, right? So join me in other videos. It's been fun. If you want to see more of these, if you want to see different tools, just let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for joining me.